Hey everyone, Ninja Art coming back with a hair tutorial this time around, as requested. And today we're going to tackle different types of hair, how to draw them, and then how to paint them. So, first of all, let's cover drawing hair, alright? So, these are the 4 things that I like to keep in mind when I'm doing hair. Actually, I will add one more at the end, but please be patient with that. So, we have these 4 here. Let's start with head. What does this mean? Well, basically this means, let's go to this handsome gentleman over here. Basically this means the head shape underneath this whole affair. Alright? Because we all learn how to draw our characters bald first, right? Then we sort of get into hair and that stuff. So, this is the head shape underneath. Why is this important? You see all this sort of space that's going on around here? All of this that's lifted above the scalp, if you will, right? All that is something that you need to keep in mind that defines the volume of the hair, that you actually kind of need to know when you shade the hair, right? Because if you look at this sort of area, right? If you were to make this, as you can see, are all solid colors, right? This is a very messy clump of hair around here, so it gets, pretty sort of opaque as well. But these areas over here, they look pretty transparent, right? You can see like sort of this gray background shining through. In that you can only sort of really kind of be in the safe zone only when you know the head shape underneath, right? So you need to get this cleared down. The next would be the hairline. That, everybody likes to make fun of this. Let's say this guy looks like he has a hairline somewhat around here. Let's say, something like that. I mean, you can fuck around with this. Honestly, the hairline is obscured, but let's say he has a huge hairline like that, something that doesn't really matter, and your hairstyle might cover it up. That's why you gave it. It gives your character style and personality. But sometimes when you have, for instance, a part in the hair, like you see here with this girl, right? Her hairline starts there. It might go something along the lines of this, right? Or over here in this woman, maybe it goes along like so. This is something that you need to keep in mind when you're doing features also, but, doesn't matter as much. But you still need to keep it in mind. Next, origins of the hair. This is a pretty big one, okay? So, this is like, these 3, right? Oh, these 3 are kind of like a technicality, if you will. This is for all of you to understand what you're going to be drawing, right? So, this origin, it all appears to originate, you see all this hair just sort of, pops in this direction? It all appears to originate around here somewhere, right? So this guy has sort of like a little part in his head, like a kind of hair part, and it all originates here. He appears to have another one over here, and this is why you have all this collision and all this, shit going on the back of his head. But what an origin is, basically, is where every single line meets in a way, directly or indirectly. But you can see all these hairs sort of go, right, all to this dot, right? Like, in a weird way, they all kind of like, even this one that's kind of doing this, it will indirectly or directly, but they all end up in this dot. You can see some over here. You can see some of these over here that they're having like a whole battle of the ages over here. This appears to have like a whole area here, and then there's like a messy area over here. That might be because of these 2 origins, if you will, meeting, right? You see that this is all this guy's trying to comb his hair, and it looks like he's fighting with his hair, but it doesn't matter. So let's do this on the rest of the heads to have a little kind of like a clear template when we're talking to different lengths of hair, right? We're looking at this girl who has obviously she has longer hair than that guy, kind of like a bob cut, I think is the correct term. But I think her head maybe looks a bit like this. Her hairline, maybe that looks proportional. I don't know. Most of the time, you kind of take a guess. At least when you're doing studies like this, right? It's not necessarily important, but to get this 100% correctly, you just need to have an idea. Because, well, we're going to see afterwards. But alright, what else? Origins. Now, when we have a part in the hair like this, see this little line? When you decide to drop a part in the hairstyle that you want to do, you're going to notice that this whole parting area thing is the origin, right? Instead of having a dot like we had here, we have this whole line. So all your hairs, as long as they point towards this line, as long as all of them flow towards this, sort of part in the head, it's gonna be fine, right? Let's say you want to draw a hair like this, just sticks out. If it fucking just goes to this line at the end of the day, then you're golden. If you have a hair that just out of nowhere, just like this, like that, that's gonna look really weird. It's not really gonna fit. But if you have a clear delineation to your origin, or at least clear enough delineation to your origin, then it doesn't matter. Let me actually finish this up real quick. Just kind of simple, just for demonstration purposes. And over here we have the same thing with the part, but it's a lot longer, right? We're actually going to leave this since I have another thing to show you right now. Right now, over here we have shapes. And I'm actually going to just like this. And let's do it separately. Now, shapes. And let's use pink. Yeah, let's use this pink for the next big one that I was going to reveal. That is flow. Right? Some flow. And what that means is basically the longer hair you have, the flowier it's going to be. The more it will be affected by gravity, right? If you have somebody with really, really long hair that's just, drips down, it's all gonna you're going to find that it sticks to their head a lot more because gravity is just having a lot more weight behind it, right? But let's go with shapes first, right? Something to always keep in mind. Shapes are really, really important, right? So shapes. This guy. So you see that he has, over here, he has pretty short hair. So this is one shape, okay? Next thing, he just has what looks to be some drops, or what I like to call them. Because this kind of looks like a drop. Like if I were to take this, flip it, kind of looks like a drop, like a flame. I don't know. Kind of. Don't judge me. But you see that these sort of shapes happen. See all this sort of like a wavy thing. You have some more shapes here. You see how you can easily break this down into shapes. I recommend this exact thing that I'm doing. Trying to do it mentally with some pictures or some art that you like. Try to find the shapes that they used in order to create this hair. This one is really simple, for example, right? This is just like if you break it down to their simplest form, it's pretty easy, right? It's pretty easy to fix this. On this one, you see, it's pretty easy. You can just, alright, let's see if I don't do it like a fucking idiot, but you can pretty much just define these two big shapes, right? It's like they're two big clumps of hair, right? And so this one's pretty easy, but what about this? Well, this has what I like to call layers, okay? So you have layered shapes. So let's say we find this shape first. Then we have this shape. Then we have this shape. This looks almost like a huge braid if you think about it. It's because the hair is kind of twisting, right? Actually, look, this is one shape, and then behind it is another one, right? I'm using a really thick brush in order to get the thing across very clearly, but it doesn't really matter what size of brush you use, but yeah. Shapes, right? You see all these shapes that happen. Now, if you just separate, let's say we hide these pictures for a bit, right? This looks so retarded, but you can see that hair is not that complicated, right? It's just a bunch of shapes that just sort of kind of line up in each other. But you have this sort of flow, which is the thing that we're going to look at next. Now, let's look at the flow here for a bit. So you can see that this guy's hair is kind of doing this. You can see that this guy's hair is kind of doing like a spiral thing. It comes over here, it drops over there like that, but also goes up over here, continues over here, but and over here it kind of like goes back on itself. It's like it does this huge, like, it's kind of like a big spiral like that. You know what I mean? Something like that. That's kind of the flow of this whole hairstyle. Some of it gets lost and it just goes out this way. Some of it just goes this way. Some of it doesn't make it and it stuck down here. On purpose, of course, this goes down in his forehead. But you can see that the flow is over here. It's just basically like boom. Some of it gets lost, some of it just sort of fades into itself. But you can see that it's this sort of flow, this sort of thing makes up this whole entire hairstyle. Let's look at this. This one's the simplest one yet, right? This whole hair is just like, sloop. That's all it does. It just drops down from her head, from the top of her head. It just goes down. Just two big arrows pointing down. But here's where we run into the problem, right? Because I imagine most of you would like to learn how to draw kind of something like this. So where do we go from here, right? This goes just all over the place. And it does. But with the shapes that we had earlier, right? If you think about those shapes, think about where each of those is sort of pointing towards, where it's facing. This kind of does like this, and then it goes over here. And then it kind of repeats itself, right? Some of this, of course, gravity makes it go down, but it basically just does this, right? You see this, just like this. And it goes here like this. And it goes here like this. This means that all this hair is doing, it is kind of twisting. You can see right here, right? Some of his hairs, as I said earlier, they don't make it through. They sort of like fall down because of gravity. This hair's pretty messy, right? As you can see, like some of it might go this way, that way. Note this, by the way, to this woman. Just like hairstylist, looks like she just got out of bed, right? It's intentional or whatever. But you can see all the hair just sort of goes away from the face, right? This can be used as a compositional element because you can see all these lines kind of point towards her eyes, right? Kind of point towards her eyes and shit. They kind of point towards her face, her head, right? Even though, yes, you have these origins, as we said before. Oh, wait, I didn't do the origins here, right? Fuck. Well, here goes nothing. The origin of this hairstyle is kind of like this, right? It kind of like starts... Let me actually pick up that green again. Where the fuck was it? Here it is. Alright, goodbye later. Nope. There we go. You can see what's happening here is that yes, the hair is originating from this hairline, right? Yes, it all kind of goes to that like original spot in the head. It all kind of looks like as if it flows to that thing, to the origin, but some of it doesn't really line up as well, right? You have these lines over here, maybe that since the hair's longer, you have this that is like, yes, at the end of the day, it's still going towards this, but it's all kind of crazy. Like, how do I come up with this crazy nonsense, right? Well, you just have to try to imagine the flow and weight and kind of what you want in your hairstyle, right? So now that we kind of have these things, which were flow, shapes, head, the origin, and the hairline. Now we have all these elements in place. Let's leave all this, all of it. No, I said all of it. Let's go to this example, right? So we're going to go to this girl and we're going to give her, I think it's her anyway, every single trait that we just mentioned, right? So we have her head shape, right? So this would be her head shape. Kind of. We have a hairline that would kind of look like this. Again, this is up to your, you can make it really huge. Let's say she's balding. I don't give a fuck. This is to your criteria. I want to give her hairline kind of over here, you know. It's gonna be really messy, by the way. This is just for demonstration purposes, but let's say something like that, right? Give her this shape. You really just look at a million hairlines. Some of them are round, some of them are pointy, some of them are non-existent. Yeah, but the most important thing is that they are there, and hair never. You can always have hair that originates from here to over here. Never make hair that, you know, I see a lot of people making hair that they, you know, it looks like this, basically, that they'll go like this, just great, you know. It's like, alright, it's fine, because it's coming from here, it's never from this hairline, right? But what some people do, that what ends up happening is that, oh god, I made a horrible mistake, haven't I? Fuck! Alright, we're back. So, basically, I see people that sort of make hair that starts from a hairline, and then hair that sort of pops around over here. That doesn't really happen. If you have layers, you can have layers of hair, right? You can, when you have longer hair over here, you can see that hair that starts over here will all drop. It's like the longest, drop the furthest down the face. And then you have hair that starts over here that kind of, maybe, right? That kind of sort of cuts in between all that. But you gotta make sure that this hair is connected properly to the head and never past this hairline, right? That's why it's called a hairline, right? So we have those two things. And now let's say we want to make an origin. Let's say I want our hair to originate, to sort of flow all back to over there. No, over here. Okay? So we want all our shapes now to be encompassing, just point towards this, right? To have this sort of flow. So let's get some shapes out in this biatch. So let me actually erase this. Thank you, Photoshop. So let's make that some actual shapes, right? For this first thing, I want to do something around the lines of, let's say make it actually pretty simple. Let's do this, right? Let's do this. Let's do something like this, and let's have like a part here, right? So we have this line, right? You can have a line and a dot, but we're gonna have that, and then we're gonna have all this. Just fucking just do whatever the fuck it wants, right? Just make like a bunch of space. So we can have this right there and that shape right here. Right? I'm cool with that. And this short here. This is gonna be like a pretty weird kind of hairstyle. I mean, I don't want this to be like really this big. This is just an area for me to just kind of do this, right? I like that better, actually. Alright, so we have all these shapes here. We can break, like this is a really big shape, for example. We can kind of like indicate with some lines how this is all going to flow. This looks like she has like a basketball in her head, but this is the whole kind of thing. So we're looking at, this is the whole kind of like shape thing that I was talking about. And then let's look at the flow for a little bit, okay? This is where things get interesting. So basically, this is where you can play around a lot. So I want this hair to kind of go from this line over here. I want this to just kind of do this flow, okay? And from this line over there, I want it to just kind of like do that. Okay? So, I mean, you can have, this is up to you. I'm just doing this to sort of give you, you know, sort of demonstrating where this thought process kind of goes. You don't have to do all these guidelines. You don't have to do all these things. I'm just explaining them in order for you to kind of understand how it is that I think when I draw hair, right? So now let's actually get to the drawing bit, okay? So when you draw hair, usually, I mean, you're going to work over these big shapes that you make. Never do this, like, alright, so I'm gonna make just a fucking million lines, right? No, that's stupid. That's never, ever gonna get you what you want. We're gonna make a new layer, of course. And what you want to do, basically, when you draw hair is try to follow these shapes. Try to, like, when you're imagining these shapes, and try to think of the outline of each of them, right? Try to think about all those times where, like, the hair would do, like, this weird thing or that weird thing. And yeah, so you're just kind of like, alright, so some hair would go like this. Like a strand, like a chunk right here. Kind of break up this big shape as we did over here. Alright, okay, and then all this would, well, it would all kind of drop. So I want this part to be, well, let's not make it so short, right? Let's, in fact, no, we're going to be faithful to our shapes over here. So go something like this, and then, I don't know, we're actually going to make it short, fuck it. And then we're going to make a clear of the part, right? We have a hair part over here. And then let's fucking go crazy because we wanted all this hair to sort of just do this on this side, right? Let's remove this. So you basically have this kind of design right now. Let's, well, instead of doing that, let me paint over this. So let's get rid of this hair thing and hairline and whatever. Let's get rid of things that wouldn't be shown. And you run into this. You're like, alright, cool. But motherfucker, this does not look like hair. I hear you saying. Yes, you're right. But this would be as far as I would go, at least in the line work, right? Just speaking my opinion, right? My thoughts here. This is as far as I would go regarding line work. Maybe, you know what? Maybe I'll do. Maybe I'll define some things. Maybe I'll throw in some lines here and there. Maybe I'll make some stray hairs to make it a little bit more interesting, right? Maybe I'll just follow these lines up. But this is really of no use because I could do this in the painting stage, right? Just following these lines. Like, I could do this in the painting stage, if I just follow the line, right, to its like inevitable end, add some more to fill in so that it makes a little bit more sense or whatever. But yeah, okay, this looks a little bit more like hair, but this doesn't really help me. In fact, what I'm going to paint over this, right? If you wanted to learn how to draw hair, there you go. Just follow those lines that you made. Just kind of follow them to their inevitable conclusion. Maybe if there's a big shape like this, make some hairs that sort of stick out to let it breathe a bit. One thing to keep in mind when drawing or painting or doing whatever, think about, even though hair will, like, we have this as an origin, like, think of that hair is all around your head. You have a million follicles, right? And if they're all, let's say they're all this long, as we said right here. Let's say they're all, let me choose a different color. Let's say hair is this long. This would be one hair. Okay, so that would go at about over there. A hair over here would go about over here. And a hair over here would go about over here. And a hair over here might go about over here. Now this is where the haircut sort of, this is where you kind of like, you would see, if you were to lift this hair up, right? All this, if you were to just lift it up, you would see that her head would actually, she only has hair up to around here. She has other hair, but I mean, like, all this shape would end right here. It would all sort of, if you were to lift this up, it would all just, well, again, this hairline, it would all just kind of go like this. Kind of like this side, but it would all just lift up. This is all into that hair, and I've made another fucking crazy mistake. Holy shit! Alright, I've gotta fucking remember. Make new layers, man. But anyway. Right, so let's say we're back to this, okay? So, cool. Say we do this. Say we start coloring this, okay? I like to make a layer underneath it, right? And first of all, let's focus on the values, okay? Because without values, there's no color anywhere. And I'm actually going to do the values in the same layer. And this is why line art, I don't give a fuck about all this line art. This is why, because when we're doing color, right, I want to use as broad of a brush stroke as fucking possible. I mean, not this huge, right? Not like this big, but I mean, like, maybe that big would be fine. Because the bigger brush strokes actually add a lot more texture. Even if you, well, granted, this thing has a little bit of noise to it. Let me show you right about now, if you can see it. This thing has a little bit of like a noise, like a little grain to it, maybe. I have other brushes that are textured, like for instance, let me see, this brush, you can see the texture is a bit more apparent, hopefully, maybe. Let me actually do it on, well, doesn't matter. This brush is a little bit more textured. If you have textured brushes, the texture will show through, and that's always a plus. But also, having a wider brush, it just helps you forget. Like, you forget about all these little small things. Like, that doesn't matter, right? Like, all these little, this and that. It doesn't fucking matter. You'll clean that up later. You just want to sort of, this helps you get that flow that I was talking about, right? So, it comes naturally. Just do a couple of brush strokes. See that? You have this natural, even if these lines were not here, and I'll show you while I hide this. Let's say I hide this, right? Look, you see that you have, these lines are sort of, they generate themselves. Sometimes it's a lot more fun to let them just generate, you know, by themselves. Just let them be here. Just let them come as they may, if you will, right? I don't know if you hear that. My mother is screaming while she's talking, and neighbors outside are clapping because of the coronavirus, and people will not stay fucking home. So, I am terribly sorry. But I do not have other times to record. And, well, back to this, right? So we have a big brush. Right, so even though I know that it's going to be a pain later, maybe, to get all these hair tips, I don't mind, because this is worth it. This creates a lot more sort of dynamic lines and value shifts and whatnot, right? So just let that be. But what if I'm drawing traditionally, man? What if I'm drawing traditionally? What if I don't have an access to all this shit? What if I want to just study hair while drawing traditional? But what if? But I'll show you another way, right? So we got this far, okay? Alright, so how do you actually, let's say, right? How do you color hair? How do you shade hair? What's the kind of thing that you actually think about when you're painting hair? Because hair does not look like this, right? Hair, I'm gonna lose my mind. Hair does not, somebody buy me a new PC. Hair does not obviously only look like this. You have highlights, you have things. Yes, we're going to get that into that later on, right? But the most important thing when shading anything, whether it's hair, whether it's any material, anything whatsoever, it's the planes, right? So think about planes. And I don't mean airplanes. I mean like this. These are planes, right? This thing over here, this sort of area, that's one plane. This plane goes like this, right? This is another plane. This is a little flatter out. It's a bit flatter, just that's this whole thing. This is another plane. This is very similar to the other one, like kind of like a rooster's mohawk, but it's another plane right here. This one's another plane. This is other thing, and well, this whole shape that's going over here as well, right? And light is going to hit them very differently. So the way to sort of think about shading is, first of all, where's your light coming from? I want my light to be coming from above, right? So we go with white, and let's say I want my light to be coming from above, right? So when I'm shading, I'm like, alright, above. So this is pretty round, so, and hair naturally creates this sort of like halo effect that you see, right? This sort of halo effect. It's kind of like a sphere. Alright, so we have this. But even though, I was like, why are you shading this? Shouldn't light hit like this? This is not like a ball. Hair is really reflective, also, sort of thing. So this would kind of come like maybe like a ring light, but it doesn't fucking matter. Just go with it, alright? Just trust me on this. Here's what I want you to do. Make the roots of the hair darker, right? You can switch this up, you can make it lighter, but in this case, make the roots of the hair lighter and the tips, darker, and the tips darker as well. Of course, this is all going to be in shadow, so we go like this, right? Because it's in shadow, it's a whole shadow cast by this big shape. And over here, we have this plane. This plane is actually going to get lit up since it's a lot messier than this. I intentionally chose this hairstyle because, well, you have a lot of fucking weird shit going on and get to tackle many different scenarios. So you get, right, so this is going to be darker. So we know that this other shape behind this one is going to be darker than this. Okay. This is going to be darker as well. This is not going to remain white, but when you're shading it, you gotta keep in mind, right? Let's say, drop this whole thing right there. There we go. So we make the background darker. Now, yes, I'm using digital tools, and I'm taking full advantage of the tools that Photoshop has because I can, but traditional artists, just look at the basics of this. Just look at what I'm doing. Just take away the theory behind it, right? Because that's the most important part. I could do this on pencil and, just printer paper, for instance. That's what you should actually do this in your very beginning, but you could just note that this plane, right, is going to get a lot more lit than this plane behind it, right? So it's not like you see this as like, wait, what plane? What's noticeable? What the fuck is going on? What do you mean? It's all just, this is one plane, right? This big shape that happened over here is like one plane, like one layer, right? And this is a shape behind it that's going to get obscured by just this thing being in front of it. That's it, right? That's the theory behind kind of like shading, stuff like that. If you're doing this traditionally. But back to digital. Or back here, okay? So what's going to happen, right? When we're thinking about highlights, same thing, right? Same theory applies, as you can see. I'm going to, actually, let me paint a lighter color. So you paint a lighter color on, like in this. You can do this with an eraser as well, by the way, traditional artists. Sorry to go back to traditional artists all the time, but I feel for them, because I was a traditional artist for a long time. There you go. And over here, no, granted this is messier, but because of this hair is messier. And there, it's kind of looking like hair already, right? It's kind of getting there. We had some rogue highlights. Let me darken this eyebrow because I'll lose my shit. And if you look over here, look at it from really far away, or the navigator, this area. You see that it's already kind of resembling hair. It's already kind of there, right? Like all right, you can tell it's hair. So that's basically the whole, like, the gist of it. If you want to make it pop more, think that hair is really shiny. Think that hair is really reflective. The brighter the light, the brighter the highlights are going to be, but also the darker the shadows. So let's say this light was brighter, or you just want to add more contrast because you like this hairstyle, whatever the fuck. If you're doing this digitally, if you're doing this traditionally, just add blacks or whites. But digitally, a cool little neat thing in Photoshop is this dodge tool over here. You get by pressing O, right? This is set to mid-tones, but yeah, it works. Paint along the highlights, and you can see that it's kind of like a color dodge layer, but it's just makes them pop a lot more. This, of course, was too strong, but I want to add it to hold this whole top part over here, right? Since it's going to be lighter, and then I want to press Alt to get like a burning effect. You see, it's going to darken this whole thing. There it is. See, it's darkening certain areas, and I want to darken, make it smaller, darken these roots a little bit more, and make this whole thing. Let me switch to shadows real quick. There it is, and darken the darks. Right. This thing kind of formed by itself over here. It looks kind of like a reflective light. It kind of doesn't really make sense, to be honest, unless she was lit from below. But you know what? Sometimes you can have that. There's no fucking, who cares? You like it? It looks cool. It's like a little. It shows like a change of plane between like this chunk of hair and this chunk of hair, and I like it, so I'm gonna keep it. And in fact, you know what? Fuck you. I am going to repeat it. Right? I liked it. So I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, I extend this highlight, repeat it all over. There you go, you found something new. You like it? Good job. Here's a cookie. Get some strand. One thing that's cool with the highlights is you sort of like get some of them out of nowhere, just like fucking bang, this goes over here right now. This goes over here. And you know what? This is shorter. This is also shorter. This is longer. This is not. This is it. Yeah, just go kind of back and forth. Make the shape a little bit crazy. Not too crazy. Maybe I went a little overboard with that, but when you look at highlights, this happens in skin as well, but highlights also highlight the texture of things. So when you're doing highlights, you want to use a thin brush, kind of just like, this is a place where you can actually go and do like those little hairs and shit, because there it's going to give the illusion that all of this is made up of this, if you will, right? Over here, right? This is going to make it pop a lot. Like, see how if you add, since a lot of these hairs are like kind of rogue and they're going on their own somewhere, some of them are going to get lit, some of them are going to get darkened. You're going to get a lot of lines in hairs like this, where hair is more sporadic or spiky and shit. Because hair is going to go on its own. You don't even know. There are shapes behind this. It's just that you're kind of messing it up on purpose to sort of bring out the texture of the hair a lot bit more. And that is it kind of for the values, right? Let's go to color. Now, something I recommend when learning color, if you have a layer that's basically your values like this, right? Get a new layer, set it to color, and this you already have your depth here. You already have your kind of your stuff, you know, what your most important stuff over here. Let's say you want some brown hair, right? I want some brown hair like this shade brown. Just drop it in, boy. But you might look like, oh man, that's something's wrong. You know? You might be tempted to do that. It's like, this looks kind of muddy, or this is not like, these highlights, they don't look like natural, or they, yeah, granted. Alright, let me actually select all outside of this quickly as possible. Shittily as possible also, apparently, right? Right, so you have all this, you're like, alright, cool, I get it. This does not look really like, you fucked it up, man. This doesn't look like brown hair. And I know, right? We are gonna, as you can see, right, we have this sort of local color. You can do that. But what I'll recommend is, hey, when there's darks, like over here, go to your color picker, pick a darker, yet more desaturated tone of the same color. Maybe, you know what? Shift the hue a little bit towards blue. Since shadows tend to be colder, or I like to make shadows colder. Drop that in to your shadows. Get some color variation in there, right? Okay, that's different. That's a little bit more natural, maybe. But the highlights do the opposite, right? So the highlights kind of punch up the brightness of your hair. Even if you have brown hair, like a shade like this, you want to pop it towards your light color. Let's say this was a very blue light. You don't want to go to blue right away, but maybe you want to move it a little bit towards blue. Or yellow, let's say it was sunlight, right? Punch up the saturation and brighten this a lot. And see, kind of let's drop this down. Slightly, very sparingly, right? That was actually maybe too much yellow. You can kick it back with your original color. This should actually look a bit more orange than thinking about it. Right? There it is. And it looks a little bit more kind of alive, kind of different. Looks a little bit more like hair. At least to me. A bit more dynamic. You have hue shift. You have a lot of stuff right here. Blonde hair is different. If you guys want a tutorial on blonde hair, I'll make a whole separate thing because it's a whole different animal. But this is basically what you're kind of looking at when you're doing hair. Now, do you use a color layer to do hair? No, I do not use a color layer to do hair. This is just kind of for you to understand. Do it here. If you have your values like this, What I use is I use a gradient map most of the time. Just drop a gradient map and then paint. But quick thing, Control U, colorize, right? I want her to have, let's go with red hair, sure. Punch up some saturation. Actually desaturate a little bit. There it is. Boom. You got some red hair. You know what? If you want, you can make some adjustments. Go to Image, Adjustments, Levels, RGB. Let's go to Red. Make the reds redder, and the whites redder. Get the shadows and make the blues, right? Make the blues bluer. A little bit though. Go overboard. There you go. And then go back to with that dodge tool. Alright. And just, oh, that's a bit too much. Maybe do like a multiply there. Maybe do your shit, you know, that's another thing. Just experiment, guys. Just try this out. Try this approach. The most important aspect to painting, believe it or not, is drawing, right? So get that out of the way first. Learn how to draw hair. Learn to do this. Look at some pictures and do this sort of shape thing. Check the flow, right? See if it makes sense, you know? And then you get into this coloring stage and whatnot. This kind of looks like hair if you look at it from far away. Of course, then there's rendering, then there's all that. But this is kind of the basics, the way I like to do hair. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, leave it down in the comments below. I'll try to answer them all. And if there's any really, really good ones, then I'll make a separate video talking about them. And hey, you will get a shout out. So, until next time, peace.